Hi, and welcome to my second episode of Bible Talk with Dr. Steve. I'm Dr. Steve. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit more about me and how I think, because it seems to me, the more you know me, the better chance you will have to hear what I am wanting to communicate. Talking about the Bible is a tricky enterprise. It seems to me that people have so many strong and divergent thoughts about what the Bible is and what it is saying, both good and bad, that taking some time up front to clarify who I am and the way my brain works will help to minimize me miscommunicating to you and you misunderstanding me. To be clear, Bible Talk with Dr. Steve is going to be a journey into what the Bible teaches me, how I study it, and why and where it guides me. And as I do that, perhaps something I say, a study tool or practice I share, or perspective I offer will resonate in your journey as well. If so, awesome. Pursue that. In the meantime, I encourage you to join with me as we talk about the Bible together. Today I'm going to share with you 3 stories with kind of an anecdote about prayer tossed in the middle of the third story. The first story communicates why I don't wear a cross. The second story is about why I sometimes compare God to an ocean. And the final story is also about God in the ocean, but this time it is also about building a community. So the first story is about wearing a cross back in the days when I was a waiter. As part of my waiter's uniform, I had to wear some kind of personalized neckwear. I found an old bolo tie in the back of my closet. But when I got to work that first day, I realized I had left it on my kitchen table. So I called up my brother and asked him to bring it to me. When he had arrived, he had both my bolo tie and a cross that he was trying to persuade me to wear because he thought it would be a good witness. When I grabbed the bolo tie instead, he got offended. But I told him, dude, if I wear the cross, they're going to look at me through their opinion of the cross, whether good or bad. They don't know me yet, and I don't want them to look at me through their opinion of what the cross means to them. In fact, this actually did happen. One of the waitresses came up to me later that night. I think she overheard the conversation between me and my brother, and she asked me, "So, are you a Christian?" I said, "I don't know." She said, "Why? Are you embarrassed?" I said, "No, I'm not embarrassed. I just don't know what you mean by the word. Nor do you know what I mean. I think the best way for you to get an answer to your question, whether or not I'm a Christian, is for you to hang out with me for 6 months, and then you tell me what I am." See, I don't really use the word Christian a lot. I'm not comfortable with it because in my experience, there are an awful lot of people who use that word whom I honestly do not seem to have a lot in common with. Besides, I think it's a pretty lofty self-identity. I mean, calling yourself a little Christ is a pretty big pair of shoes to fill. I think that sort of praise ought to come from others and not my own mouth. Proverbs 27:2. In the same way, I'm doing Bible Talk with Dr. Steve, and loads of people have loads of various impressions, both good and bad, about the Bible. So I think the best way to start is by sharing some of my thoughts on life and how I perceive God. Because once people better understand where I'm coming from, they'll be better able to hear what I'm saying. So my second story is about God being like the ocean. Imagine the ocean in Hawaii. It's beautiful, huge, warm, and wonderful. Certainly you can't drink the whole ocean like a glass of water. It's too big. But you can go swimming in it. But no matter how fast you swim and how many molecules of water you touch, you can never touch them all. There will always be parts of the ocean you can never experience. And remember, the deeper you go, the darker the ocean gets and the colder it is. But it's still the ocean. I believe what happens is people explore different parts of the ocean, and the ones sitting in the warm areas think the people who are looking at the deeper, colder parts are in a different ocean. You're talking about a different God. No, God is bigger than we understand. And I think people in the deeper parts of the ocean are simply looking for answers to questions the people in the warmer parts of the ocean do not have adequate answers for. I want to explore on my channel as many parts of the ocean as we can reach. Now, my third story is about a little boy who loves the water. It's his favorite thing. So when he grows up, he buys a house on the beach so he can be as close to the water as he can get. Every morning he goes down to the ocean with a 1-gallon clear glass bucket, and he fills it up with ocean water and brings it back to his house, and he places it on the mantle. Every day he enjoys dining, sitting by the fire and looking at his water, admiring it, studying it, just being as close to it as he can get. But after a week, his water evaporates. So he's got to go back to the ocean and bring another bucket of water back to put on his mantle. And again, when he does that, he sits back and enjoys being as close to the water as he can get. And this goes on for some time until he realizes that if he got a bucket twice as big, he could carry more water and would only have to go down twice a month to get the water. So he does that. And again, this goes on for some time until he realizes that, wait, if I double the bucket size yet again, I'd only have to go down once a month, which would give me all the more time to sit and admire and study my water. So the boy goes down with an even bigger bucket, but when he tries to lift it, it's too heavy. He notices all around other people looking at him, some with 2-gallon buckets, some with 1-gallon buckets, all gathering water just like him. And he's like, hey everybody, I have this really big bucket of water that I can't carry alone. Why don't you help me carry it, and we could go back to my house, I'll feed you, and we can all sit around and admire our water in our bucket. So they take the bucket full of water back to the house, set it on the mantle, and they all enjoy the water together. Some admire it, some study it, others talk about it, while others glean from the insights of the rest. In other words, they form a community that loves the ocean and wants to know it better and to experience it more and to do so together. So in this story, the ocean is God and the bucket is my heart. The more God I bring into my heart, the heavier my heart becomes, just like filling the bucket with water. This principle is found in Ecclesiastes 1:18. In much wisdom there is much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increasing pain. That is to say, the more we learn, the more we open our eyes. And the more we open our eyes, the more we see. And the more we see, the tougher life can become because we know there are struggles all around us. And Isaiah 58 teaches me that we are absolutely supposed to help those in need, not simply pray for them. And just for a moment, let me share with you my thoughts about prayers and praying for one another, which I would argue the Bible is a big fan of. I certainly pray for my family and friends, but I need to be praying for the people I can't reach. Let me illustrate my point with an anecdote. My biological dad died quite a few years ago, and when he died, I was devastated. I loved him tons and still miss him every day. The reason I'm telling you this story is because after Dad passed away, some of my friends in church disappeared. I went over to visit one of them one day, and she said, hey, we haven't seen you in a while, Steve, but I wanted you to know that our Bible study prays for you every week. I got kind of upset. I mean, not demonstrably, but inside it bothered me quite a bit. So I told her, please stop praying for me. I told her I didn't want her prayers. And she was shocked because she knew I did a lot of praying. In fact, my apartment in LA was known as an apartment of prayer because lots of my friends used to come over all the time and would have these long prayer meetings. But I didn't want her prayer because, like I told her, prayer is for people you can't see, people you can't help. You need to help the people down the street, give them bread, a place to live, food, clothing, and comfort. You take care of the needs of the people around you, like Isaiah 58 says. You pray for people living in countries you can't get to, people living in war-torn places where you can't reach but are in need, people racing by in ambulances whose lives are being devastated at the moment. Pray for those people. Help the people you can help, and pray for the people whom only God can help in the moment. And that doesn't mean you can't pray for your friends. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if what you do is exclusively to pray for somebody and you don't reach out to them and take care of their needs when and if you can, then I think you may be making a mistake. Again, it's up to you. You can do what you feel called to do, but this is just how I think. This is where I'm at. The more you follow this channel, the more you'll realize how difficult I think following Jesus actually is. It's like the analogy of the ocean and the bucket. The more you fill your heart with God, the heavier your heart gets, to the point where you can't do it alone. You naturally build community, people who can support you, not because you're called to, not because you have to, not because they'll call you a lone ranger if you don't. It's just because it's heavy. So it's important to find people who are gathering the ocean in their buckets like you are, and you can hang with them and strengthen one another and encourage one another. For somebody like me who explores the deeper, colder parts of the ocean, finding people who want to look at the more difficult questions is a blessing. One of my heroes in life is Richard Wurmbrand, a Romanian Jew who came to believe Jesus was the Messiah and spent over 14 years in prison suffering for his faith. Richard tells a story when he was in prison that one of the more vicious guards came to him one day and told him he was going to beat him until he either died or showed the guard a miracle. Richard told it this way: "The guard came to me and he told me, 'I am going to beat you to death until you show me some kind of miracle.' And he started punching me in the face very hard. And I hate being hit. My mother once slapped me when I was a little boy, and I hated that. It hurt so badly. And now this man who was beating my face was a killer. He killed many people every day, and I knew this." And then he stopped and he said, "You say you believe in this great Jesus, but I do not think he is as great as you say. If he were, he would not let a man like me beat you. So show me a miracle. Turn the room glowing red or levitate. Do a miracle or I will beat you to death." And then he continued beating my face so hard. Then I looked up at him and I said, "I will show you a miracle. You'll look at me with so much hatred in your eyes, and you beat my face, and yet I can only look at you with love. This is a miracle." The guard fell that day to his knees and begged Richard to forgive him. The guard became a Christian, and if I remember correctly, he was later killed by his comrades because he stopped beating the prisoners. What kind of Jesus teaches us to love with such a great heart? Richard's Jesus is the kind of Jesus I want to follow. The Jesus who can help me to love even the most unlovable people. I'm tired of hearing Christians talk about people we don't agree with, saying how lost they are. We should be talking about ourselves. We don't even live up to our Christian standards. Besides, doesn't the Bible teach me, of course, they will know us by our love, not by our adherence to right doctrine. Besides, loving them, in my estimation, is right doctrine. Matthew 5:44. Another story Richard told during one of his sermons was about a Nazi soldier who came to his home years after the war and bragged about how during the war he would go to villages around Romania and kill everyone in the family except one person. So the life of that one person would be more difficult. And after the guard finished his rant that evening, Richard stood up and said, "My wife is a very old and frail woman. She is asleep right now in the bedroom. She lived in one of those villages you brag about killing. She was the survivor in her family. You shot her little brother out of her arms while she tried to protect him from you. I would like to propose an experiment. She is a Christian woman. I am going to wake her up, and I'm going to tell her that the man who killed her family is in the living room right now bragging about laughing and killing her entire family. She will come to you, kiss you on the cheek, and offer you something to eat and drink as she learned from the teachings of Jesus." And at that point, Richard got up and without any kind of explanation went to her and told her about the man. Sabina came out just as Richard had said. She kissed the man on the cheek and offered to serve him food and drink. The man was so deeply sorrowful he couldn't quit apologizing, and later that night gave his life to following the loving Jesus shown to him by Richard and Sabina. I want to know that Jesus. I think that's the Jesus of the Bible, but I think the church has watered him down. I don't want to keep looking at simple answers to complex realities. I'm sick of the say a prayer, go to heaven kind of Christianity now because I do not think it's biblical. So on this channel, we are going to be exploring the Jesus who hangs out in deep waters. Like the Bible teaches me, deep calls to deep. Psalm 42:7. I want to know if the Bible is true. What does the Bible text teach? I think a lot of people aren't actually telling us. I've spent an awful lot of time studying, and I want to share with you what I've seen and what I know, what works in my life. And then you can decide if that's something you want to follow. Whether you do or not, hey, it's cool. But following the Bible, although it is very difficult, I would argue it also brings an enormous amount of joy. Anyway, as we continue together, we'll get into more Bible conversations and more about what the Bible teaches me. We'll have lots of Bible studies. So, we'll just get to know each other better, and as we get to know each other better, we'll get to know the Bible better. In the next episode, we'll talk about Isaiah 63:1 and what I believe is a mistranslation in most English Bibles, why that is, and what I actually think the Bible is wanting to communicate. All right? Well, thank you for joining me for the launching of my YouTube channel. And if you want to send me notes, subscribe, awesome. If you have any questions or topics you'd like to talk about, let me know, and then we'll go through those in the future. All right? Well, thanks for joining me. I'm Dr. Steve, and this is Bible Talk with Dr. Steve. Peace.